Western premiers meet in Yellowknife. Canada Post can't deliver on that promise it made 40 years ago. Union wants the government to seize assets. A golden dome. And the media gets called out. All that and more on The Really Big Show. I'm here with Iain Burns. I'm Jim Csek with NowMedia. Iain Burns out there in the nation's capital. Another beautiful day in here in the Okanagan here. How are things looking in the nation's capital?
It's another pretty lame day, to be honest. Clouds and chance of rain, and I think it's about 12 or something like that. It's not been much of a spring so far.
Well, the big meeting is taking place there in Yellowknife. I don't know if you've ever been to Yellowknife. Beautiful, beautiful area. You can see the northern lights there. Spectacular, actually. Every Canadian should go to Yellowknife. I think every Canadian that comes to Canada should spend at least a year in Yellowknife. But yeah, so David Eby set to meet with Daniel Smith and other Western leaders in Yellowknife today. Set there to discuss energy security, trade, and Arctic sovereignty. And Smith says she wants a pipeline. And she wants a pipeline to the coast. I wonder how that conversation is going to go. Because Smith is going to say pipeline. And it's like that old SNL skit with Cheeseburger Pepsi. I'm sure Eby's going to say, what about this? And she's going to say pipeline.
Well, it's kind of ironic as well, because Eby's comment, he did the obligatory sort of dig where he's on about, it's very sad that people are talking about separation at this time. Just a kind of pointless thing to say, really.
Yeah.
But the more interesting comment that he made was saying that Western Canada is the economic engine of the country, and pointing out that it's, he said this a few times, hasn't he, in relation to equalization and migration and all kinds of things like that, like where the asylum seekers are distributed and all that kind of thing. But it's just a little bit ironic, really, because BC is the economic engine of nothing, really, is it? BC
well, it
has
used
one,
to be. It used to be.
Yeah, it used to be. But it has one thing that's relevant, and it's, to be fair, extremely relevant and a massive, massive, powerful possession, and that's the Port of Vancouver, isn't it, really? Other than that,
the coastline is their thing. Yeah, the port.
But it's that port in particular, which is kind of why the British took it in the first place, why Mr. Vancouver went there in the first place, because it's got that glorious port protected by Vancouver Island. It doesn't freeze, and it got access to the Pacific and also down the American coast there.
Access to the world, basically, yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, what does BC have other than that? It's got masses of LNG and minerals and all the rest of it, which it's quite difficult to extract. It's got a lot of hydro, but not enough to power the province, because it has to buy from Alberta and the US. What else does BC have? It's not exactly doing well. So when you talk about Western Canada being the economic engine of Canada, I agree, but it's Saskatchewan and Alberta, isn't it? Let's be serious about that.
He could rephrase that and say Alberta and Saskatchewan are the crown jewels of Canada, and I have the key that blocks them from accessing the world. That'd be more.
Yeah, I'll do everything
honest,
I can.
Right?
Just like it's, I think it's safe now. I think he's been gone long enough that we can start to be critical of John Hogan. But where are the comments about John Hogan, who did absolutely everything he could to try and stop everything, really? But he's, particularly the TMX, he was and tankers in southern BC waters, so hostile to that. And David Eby, when is he going to sort of admit that his party and his predecessor were completely wrong to do that, and that they've damaged the Canadian economy and made us even more reliant on the now hated United States?
Yeah, it's BC used to be an economic engine. There are two bigger ones other than the coastline, but it's basically a key for him, a key to for the rest of the provinces that need it. Used to be mining and forestry, but both of those suffering, especially forestry. Forestry in a shambles, really. They've started this, you and I talked about it, they started a committee to look at it, and the committee is full of people that are never going to kind of like figure anything out other than forming another committee, maybe.
How to figure out remuneration for themselves.
Yeah, they'll get that part right, that's for sure. And then In Banff, though, they're hosting the G7 Finance Summit, and Francois-Philippe Champagne will be there.
Well, thank God. You know, sometimes it's easy to be pessimistic, isn't it? But thank God we've got a heavyweight like Champagne there in charge of that, you know, like a real beefy, giant brain, massive list of successes that he can point to. You know, say what you want about the Liberals. We've got Champagne.
We'd be better off with a couple of bottles of champagne, I think. But
yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, Francois Philippe. He doesn't fill me with confidence, as you can probably tell.
Well,
he doesn't even know how to. He doesn't even know how to speak.
Yeah,
and that's, you know, that might sound like a small thing and like a petty thing to criticize somebody for, but I just, he never says anything interesting or coherent. That's a pretty bad sign, isn't it? In like the number 2 man in the government.
He spent quite a few minutes there telling Vasi Kapelis that there is no need for a budget, that Canadians just wanted that tax break, and that's, you know, like they're acting in the best interests of Canadians again. Why would you need a budget when, you know, you can just trust us? Like, look at what we've done for the past 10 years. Look at what we've done for the past 10 years. Just have a look. And then...
well, remember that when I still can't get it out of my mind when he announced the Honda investment that's now being paused, whatever that means. But when he announced that, it was like, he was like, you know, the man that has won the raffle. He was so pleased with himself. He was absolutely delighted, and it was going to revolutionize the Canadian economy and all the rest of it. And it was a small amount of money for us to give in subsidy and blah, blah, blah. And just like everything else that he's been responsible for, in a very short period of time, it just disintegrated, turned into nothing. And we're left with the bill.
He is very good at virtue signaling and identity politics, for sure. And I'd say a lot of the Liberals are very good at that. And not so good at humility, and not so good with honesty with the Canadian people.
I mean, to be honest, I would accept almost anything. They can pursue their little religion of hyper-liberalism, whatever you want to call it. They can have that religion. You know, I'm very tolerant of people's religions by and large, and I'll let them have that if they're competent. That's the problem, isn't it? It's the competence crisis that you hear so much about. And that's usually in the context of blue-collar jobs and things like that, where it's like, oh, people have forgotten how to be electricians and all that stuff. I think it's much better to look at our elite when it comes to that question of competence. Because if you're incompetent and you're a religious preacher, who wants that? Who's going to listen to you? And I think that explains the death of Justin Trudeau's political career, because he was both of those things. He was a religious preacher for the religion of, you know, whatever you want to call it, a sort of American college campus leftism or liberalism or whatever it is. Plus, he was incompetent and he couldn't get anything done. He couldn't achieve anything. So that's the problem. I almost feel like, and I'm probably not the only person that thinks this way. Hence, Mark Carney was just elected on the assumption that he's competent. Really, that's the theory, isn't it? And people are willing to forgive him for anything else, any level of, you know, deception or vagueness or anything to do with Brookfield and all the rest of it, as long as he's competent. But I mean, we hold our breath, don't we, in anticipation. Is he going to be the competent one? Because his finance minister does not fill me with confidence.
So far, nothing points to an accomplishment so far. This one is disturbing. This is the uniform president. We'll play this clip here.
Asking the government to consider legislative amendments to include heavier fines imposed on firms that shift production, the ability to seize assets of companies, as well as restricting imports from corporations and companies that offshore Canadian investment and jobs. This may sound heavy-handed. That's because it is. And that's because this is the fight of our lives. We must take a stand now, as the bleed has already begun. Fair trade is a two-way street. And companies that operate in Canada cannot for a second believe they can act with impunity for following orders issued by the President of the United States. If they act against the economic interests of this country, they must also face punishment. Along with my letter to the Prime Minister and his cabinet, we've shared a comprehensive legal opinion that outlines various options. We look forward to further discussions with the federal government on this matter. I want to thank you very much for joining, and now I'm available for any questions.
Well, I'm sure that strikes just a ton of confidence in anybody that wants to invest in Canada right now.
I was just thinking, like, did that thought even enter her mind before she uttered those words?
I mean,
it seems that the answer is no. I mean, apparently it didn't even enter her mind, which is just remarkable, isn't it?
That is the beginning of a death spiral. If you're saying that, and now you're sitting there with investment capital, and you have a choice to invest it in Canada or the United States, here's one country that is a union is proposing legislation that will seize your assets. If you have
knowing what I know now,
if you have to make a business decision, would you invest in Canada?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, whereas the Americans also are trying to figure out ways to punish people that leave, but as usual, you have to mention it's a different beast altogether, isn't it? Canada is optional for every company on in the planet, or in the world rather, whereas the US isn't. The US is essential. So they can do that kind of thing. We can't.
If the government wants to do it, if the Canadian government wants to do it, they should start with Brookfield and show it as an example. Lead by example. Seize all the assets of Brookfield. Just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And that is what is going to force more investment out of Canada. Because here's a couple of choices that Canadian companies have. If they think this is going to be real, they leave right away before the legislation comes into play. Two, the most important one is, why would you invest in Canada if this is even proposed legislation? Look at all the headwinds that right now for companies that are thinking about investing in Canada. It's not a pretty picture. High taxation, tons of regulation, really hard to get anything done in a time frame that is like 20 years to get a mine site permitted in Canada. 20 years. Like who wants to embark on that? The never-ending bottomless pit of hostility that certain groups within Canada have towards any kind of development whatsoever, including NIMBYs, basically the entire province of Quebec, a lot of urban British Columbia, many First Nations, David Eby,
lots of activist environment groups that call themselves environmentalists, just like activist left-wing groups, and then lots of lawyers who just are along for the ride because they get a lot of money to go to court with activists and First Nations and all the rest of it. It's like a coalition of the anti-builders, and yeah.
So here's some more good news.
The legal arrangement as well favors them, doesn't it, rather than central authority. So I mean, everything's basically on their side.
So here's some more bad news for Canada. A TD chief economist says that Canada will likely enter a recession and will bleed 100,000 jobs.
Nice.
Next slide there. There you go. Yeah. So, and then the budget. The Parliament. It's summer holidays. You know, because they work 3 weeks.
Well, she just said that, Mrs. Unifor there just said, like, this is the greatest challenge of our lives. We've heard that a lot of times, haven't we? But apparently it's not that big of a challenge because we can still go on our vacations, can't we? We can still relax. They've had, before you get cheeky about them, remember that the politicians, they've had a lot of worrying to do, and they've had to campaign. They've had to wonder if they're going to keep their seats and their delicious pensions and massive salaries. It's been very stressful. I think they need to go have some time on the beach.
We're going to talk about it later, but it looks like the Canadian Pension Fund is investing in the United States too. We'll talk about that later too. So maybe we'll seize those assets. That comment from her is actually dangerous to investment in Canada. Like I'm telling you, there's so many places in this global economy where you can invest, And if you hear those words, where Canada's become more and more socialist, and that is next to like a Russia thing, like we're going to seize assets and stuff like that. That's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. This is a Hollydone Blacklock story. Canada Post in real trouble. And they cite a 1985 no layoff promise, so now they're being held to that. Canada Post management agreed at that point to an ironclad job security plan 40 years ago that finds that commitment now untenable. So there you go. So they've got themselves in a really tough spot. So, like they're like $1 billion losses. Yeah. So I don't like what is the path forward for Canada Post?
It almost feels like it's like they're playing chicken. The workers and the management or whatever you want to say, the government, whatever, they're playing chicken, aren't they? And I think in this case, they're just going to crash into each other. And it looks like it's just going to be, as is often the case with our hopeless species, even though you can see something coming from a mile away, it has to, there has to be the crash. Otherwise, it won't be fixed. So it looks like they're just going to burn it down, aren't they? And then start again afterwards.
I think that the bad thing in this is for Canadian taxpayers is that they believe that they can just reach into your pocket, my pocket, and Canadians' pockets to continue funding this thing that doesn't really have a real business case anymore.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think it's reasonable to subsidize mail delivery to places where, like, that's the biggest defense, isn't it? Canada Post, they subsidize mail delivery to like really hard to reach places, rural places, and all that. Like, that's great. I think most people are okay with that. But what's really killing the company is that they refuse to adapt in other areas, and they refuse to go in on the package delivery and all the rest of it. That can't be subsidized, can it? Because at that point, you're just subsidizing the workforce so that they can have much better sort of employment conditions compared to UPS and all the rest of them, FedEx. That's not really fair, is it? I mean, and we have a similar arrangement with lots of government jobs, don't we? Where they get so much more money than their private sector colleagues, let's say, who are equivalents. They get more vacation time, better pensions, all the rest of it. But we pay for it all, and so does the sort of guy that works for the private company doing the same job. I mean, that's obviously not fair, and it's unreasonable, isn't it? And it's often obtained through unions who threaten the government. So obviously that can't continue.
And this is another one from Blacklock's. Harold Jonker, a municipal councillor, was one of the first to join the 2022 Freedom Convoy and was arrested there and was acquitted of all charges. So there you go.
Took a while, didn't it?
Took a while, yeah. The judge saw through the Crown's weak case and had the courage to do the right thing, Jonker's lawyer said, right, in a statement on the acquittal of mischief and intimidation charges. There you go, a councillor. And he's a church elder, father of 13. This guy's busy. A township of West Lincoln, Ontario, where he attended a peaceful demonstration as manager of a trucking firm. 13 kids. Not many people have 13 kids anymore. Tough to afford.
You'd want to pop another one out, wouldn't you? Just for good
just
luck.
To get past that number.
13. But I would say, like, I mean, this is a very big topic, and we don't really have time to go into it. But so he had a trucking business. Well, of course he was upset. We all seem to forget, don't we? The truckers were, back then, they thought that they were finished. They thought that their livelihoods had completely gone, and they were desperate. But for some reason, we forget that. Like, he had every reason to demonstrate. He had every reason to be, or anybody associated with the trucking industry had every reason to be upset then. And it was also a ridiculous regulation anyway, wasn't it? It was a completely stupid, pointless thing, like so much else during COVID. Just performative, to use that word that I despise.
The township,
but will that empathy, basic empathy or understanding, ever be on display from the people that want to prosecute the likes of this chap. I don't think so.
The township of West Lincoln also piled on and gave him a $1,700 fine for breaching code of conduct. Why not, eh?
Just wrote in there. Yeah, so he's terrified for his income and his livelihood. Might as well fine him as well. That's good.
Yeah, so there you go. Well, he was acquitted. I'm sure he got a lot of, I'm sure, negativity from his fellow council members there who wanted to pile on during that time.
It's a very empowering time for that sort of personality, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, yeah, vigilantes and deputized. Everybody got deputized, turn in your neighbors, do everything you can. We did lots of stories on the truckers, and we got a lot of hate mail for it. So because we did stories on truckers from the Okanagan that traveled there, and we were called quite a few names on it.
And that was in large part because of Justin Trudeau's misinformation. Well, disinformation, I suppose you would say, where he tried to associate everybody involved in that trucking rally with racism and sexism and Nazism and all sorts of other isms.
Yeah, every is that there is. Like, he definitely threw it all out there. And he refused to talk to them.
He quite literally endangered their lives and certainly destroyed their reputations.
We had reporters from mainstream media actually doing the jobs of the government, actually going up there and getting the VIN numbers out of the trucks, doing the research, and finding out who these companies are, and then basically doxing them.
Yeah, they also doxed them when they hacked into the Give, Send, Go, or whatever it was, the fundraiser, and they got all the numbers and addresses and names of people that donated. And the media started to, I don't know if you can remember this, one of the most disgraceful episodes in the history of journalism, as far as I'm aware. They started to publish stories saying, like, Brian Jones, who's a physiotherapist in Peterborough, Ontario, or something, like, he donated money. It's like absolutely psychotic, like sociopathic levels of
isn't the media's role supposed to be to hold power accountable instead of actually enforcing the power that's bestowed upon the government, like acting as their enforcer?
Well, it's kind of the clue, isn't it, as to how the media, the Canadian media, and the media class perceives itself. They see themselves as the enforcer, the protector of the island of liberalism in Ottawa and Toronto and Vancouver, or these little islands that kind of, they're just hanging on in a sea of rednecks, or however they would describe those people. That's how they see themselves, and they're kind of like, they're like these they are like the foot soldiers of liberalism, aren't they? And they protect all the special groups that they obsess about, LGBT and whatever else, immigrants, or not immigrants like me, obviously. You have to be a good immigrant, not a bad one.
Well, good news. Canada is now producing navel oranges, according to Loblaws anyway. If you look at the sticker there on there, product of Canada. I didn't know we grew navel oranges. Did you?
This is really funny though, isn't it? Because he's saying once it was pointed out, they got rid of it and then took $1 off the price. It's hilarious.
Absolutely.
But that's, like how gullible does what is this, Loblaws or Superstore? Yeah,
Loblaws. Yeah. Well, that is Superstore.
Yeah. How gullible do they think that the Canadian public actually is? That if you just put a maple leaf on it, even if it's an orange, and say, look at this Canadian orange, that people will pay $1 more for it because it's got the maple leaf and it's like elbows up or something along those lines. Like that's the kind of contempt that these stores seem to have, or at least this one store.
Is it elbows up or pants down? I'm not sure where this is going. Like, yeah, they're charging more. Labeling a product that if you just had a little bit of common sense, you'd say, navel oranges grown in Canada? Like, okay. Show me
Just
where they
absurd,
are growing them. Show me where they're growing them. On somebody's patio?
We should grow oranges in Canada. Use some of that nice cheap energy to build greenhouses.
I've tried a few times to grow oranges and like limes and that, and I always forget to bring them in from the patio and that. They do get fairly tiny though. So it was, when you go to places like Arizona and that, and you just walk outside of your hotel room and like some of the areas there, and there's like grapefruits, and you can eat right off the tree. It's kind of cool, right?
Yeah, Florida as well, famous for that.
Trump did a big announcement yesterday on the Golden Dome, and it says Canada can be a part of the Golden Dome. I don't think they have much choice to make us part of that Golden Dome. But yeah, so he says that Canada wants to be a part of it. I mean, I would think that they would, just like all the defense stuff, they protect us in their best interests.
Totally, and he's obviously tried to swing it as being like, oh, we'll protect Canada like we always do. We'll help them out. And he's also said that Canada's going to have to pay for it. I mean, you're right, though. Why would the Americans, just think about it from a strategic angle, why would the Americans protect the lower 48 states and then Alaska and just leave this massive chunk just there on like to the north and east?
Knowing what I
Why would they do that? Obviously, they want to include Canada. And this is funny from Canada's perspective. This is almost like something, which is also the case with NORAD, where we could almost say, like, what are you going to give us? We'll let you do this. We'll let you use our airspace. What are you going to give us in exchange for letting you have strategic control of, our skies, effectively? But instead, Trump, the master manipulator, he reframes it, doesn't he? He completely flips it, and he makes it a gift from the US.
I think what we should give them is in exchange for the protection of the Golden Dome, which I believe we should want, is we should give them Francois Philippe Champagne, Melanie Jolie, and Justin Trudeau.
Where would they fit in the American political landscape? Maybe they would be obscure California sort of mayors or something like that.
Well, they could go to a lot of those ICE detention facilities and stand there.
With a white dress on, crying.
The South African president visiting the White House as tensions with the U.S. as tensions rise. South African president is due to meet with Donald Trump in the White House today. And that's over the South African.
He's arrived now.
Yeah, there you go.
But it's very, yep, they're doing it now. They're doing the press conference now, which could be hilarious. But yeah, obviously it's a poisoned relationship for many reasons. But the South Africans have, Trump talks all the time, doesn't he, about non-tariff barriers. The South Africans, in a way, have like some of the most intricate non-tariff barriers in the world. They have a very abstract system of ownership, and you've heard Elon Musk complain about that. It's all, as with most revolutionary countries, revolutionary societies, it's all based it's all justified based on the revolution, which in the case of South Africa was getting rid of white rule and replacing it with black rule. Or ANC rule. So they have lots of ways of justifying it, but it's not going to, Donald Trump doesn't like that. And then on top of that, they accused Israel of genocide. They've been very, very anti-Israel for many years now, the South Africans. And obviously the Americans don't like that because they're good friends with Israel. And then there's the unpleasant treatment of white people in South Africa, which is, at least in terms of the government, the federal South African government, it's undeniable that they're not very nice to white people. It's built into the law. Just listen to their speeches. Listen to the speeches of senior ANC figures and EFF figures. They're not very nice about white people. But for some reason, that's being portrayed as though it's like a conspiracy. And Trump and also Marco Rubio have said, we're not going to put up with that. We're not going to do business with you if you're going to be hostile to a racial minority. But it is, to be fair, it isn't just whites. They're also very hostile to Zimbabweans and other sort of African, sort of sub-Saharan African immigrants who come down to South Africa. They're not very nice to them either. But we'll see. We'll see what they discuss.
Yeah, Jake Tapper on that tour promoting his book ended up on the Megyn Kelly show, and she was not very kind to him. We're going to play this clip here from Megyn Kelly and Jake Tapper and Alex. I always forget his last name. The co-writer of the book that Jake Tapper is out there, The Original Sin.
I know now, obviously, I feel tremendous humility about my coverage, that Laura Trump interview, for example, et cetera.
We'll
She saw something that I did not see at the time, 100%. And I own that. I did ask Joe Biden to be transparent about his health records in an interview in 2020. I did ask him about the fact that voters
but then he wasn't.
thought that he was not transparent at all. No.
He promised you that
no.
he would be transparent about his health records, and then he wasn't. And when you sat with him again,
at all.
including 1 month after the Jackie Walorski thing, you didn't ask him about it. You didn't follow up on the fact that he was falling up the stairs, that he was losing his train of thought regularly, that he was slurring, that he was incomprehensible, that he was getting lost on the White House lawn. You sat right across from him and you asked none of that, notwithstanding the fact that he had promised you he would be fully transparent about his health issues.
That's true, but I did ask him about his age and the fact that the American people had concluded that even though he said whenever anybody brought up the subject of his age, watch me. And I said,
yes,
they're watching you and they are concerned that you were too old for this job.
But you know as well as I do that there's a way of, you can say, hey, there's this poll on your age, or you could say, you just forgot that Jackie Walorski was dead. You asked where she was moments after watching a videotape tribute to her. You lowered the flags at the White House after she died. This happened 13 days before you sat with him. There is a way of pressing a man like that on the actual infirmities to bring it home to him and to the audience, and you didn't do it.
That's correct. I didn't. And like I said, I feel humility about my coverage. I mean, it's not like I was asking him his favorite movie or his favorite color. We were talking about Putin. We were talking about other issues of national importance. But yeah, I mean, of course, I've said I look back at my coverage with humility, and I wish I did cover the issues of age and acuity, but I wish I had covered them much more. And I wish, I mean, of course, it's May 2025. Do I wish that in that 10, 15-minute interview I had with Biden in October 2022, that this had been the only subject because I had then
well, it
what I
wasn't
know
just
now?
that, though, Jake. It wasn't just that. I mean, you sat with him a couple of times in the course of his presidency, and these issues were not pressed. Well, there was at least that time, and then there was the time at the beginning. And but separate and apart from that, you covered the Biden's presidency. No. Let me just finish my point. You covered the Biden presidency.
I had one
okay,
interview
right,
with
and
him
it was
during his
13 days
presidency.
after the Jackie Walorski thing. But you covered the Biden presidency aggressively throughout the 4 years, and you didn't cover mental acuity hardly at all. I mean, time and time again, when issues came up, you seemed to be running cover for the president.
I don't think
interested.
that's true.
Well, I mean, we'll start with the Laura Trump issue that you referred. Here it is. This happened in 2020.
Joe Biden, as we all know, has worked to overcome.
That's fine for now. You got to go watch that full interview. I watched that full interview with Megyn Kelly, and Jake Tapper definitely backpedaling a lot. And so, I mean, he did admit that with humility, he wished he would have done better coverage, but he's not taking any responsibility for it, for sure.
No, it's not. It's not good enough. If he thinks that he can find an escape route from mainstream media, particularly that CNN brand that he exemplifies, then he's going to have to do more of a mea culpa than that. He's going to have to do a bit more like what's his name did, the brother of Cuomo's brother. I never remember his name, but he did more of a convincing sort of like, sorry guys, yeah, made a mistake. But yeah, Megyn Kelly there, relentless, wasn't she? She's a real tapper slapper.
Yeah, no, she went after him pretty good, and well deserved too, Jake Tapper. We're going to play a little clip later on here in our comedy section there with Bill Maher that goes after Jake Tapper as well. Sadly,
but it's funny. He's kind of just thrown himself. He's thrown himself to the wolves, isn't he? And he's like, well, I tried. It's like you're gonna have to do a bit more than that, mate.
All in the name of selling a book, right? Hey, cash money. It's all about the cash money. Yeah. Hey.
I guess so, and I guess that's also true 3 years ago or whatever, when he was indeed running cover for the Biden administration, which had as its figurehead a man that was quite clearly a vulnerable old person that didn't even know how to get off a stage. I mean, it was obvious that he was a bit at sea, That sort of conspiracy. There's only one way to describe that, and it is a conspiracy. That was a conspiracy of silence or a cover-up from the likes of CNN to refuse to discuss the fact that the most powerful country in the world had like a doddering geriatric as its leader. Very, very strange.
Just there's somebody in our comments here that is trying to dominate all the comments and telling Canadians here that it's never been greater. Like basically trolling and trying to pick fights and stuff like that. And just, I guess everybody's just having a vibe session. Like there's no problems in Canada, according to CW888. Why not put your real name down there, CW888, instead of just spewing all this nonsense? How about that, eh?
That's a very lucky number in China,
isn't it? There you go.
888. We like that.
888. Some BC and local news here. The Colona RCMP, the city is looking at maybe considering getting a municipal police force. And we're going to play a clip here from our own Kent Mulgat that went out there and talked to the Colona about the Colona RCMP. Let's play that clip.
The city of Kelowna is taking a look at the possibility of ending the long relationship it's had with the RCMP providing police services in the city. But as they engage with a consultant on the topic, they're being careful to point out that this isn't out of any dissatisfaction with the level of service they've been able to get with the RCMP.
No. This is an exploratory review so that we can understand and assess two different models of police service delivery. One is contract policing, and the other is a municipal police service delivery model. And I think it's really important as we get into this process to understand this is about good governance. This is about us being prudent and proactive in our planning. We are a rapidly growing city, and we need to ensure that we have the right policing model that meets our needs and community interests now and into the future.
This process could open the door to saying goodbye to a long relationship with the RCMP. It does sort of open up that possibility.
It does open up the possibility, and again, I can't emphasize enough, at this juncture, it is an exploratory review to really educate ourselves and also to prepare ourselves for the possibility that the federal government does not enable the RCMP to be a viable contracting agency after 2032. We are in a 20-year agreement for contract policing in this country, and that expires in 2032. And there is uncertainty as to whether or not the RCMP will continue to offer contract policing services. And so we as a city, from a good governance perspective, we need to be proactive and we need to be prepared should that scenario play out with the federal government.
Okay, so I guess what people shouldn't be taking from this is the suggestion that this is all brought about because of some dissatisfaction or problems with how it works with the RCMP.
Yeah, on the contrary. In fact, we have great confidence in all of the uniformed members within the RCMP detachment, as well as the many municipal non-uniformed staff who work behind the scenes in our detachments. The work that those people do is absolutely vital to our community. It's incredibly difficult and complex work, and we have complete confidence in them throughout this review.
Right now,
There you go. They're exploring, taking a look at that. Municipal police force is hard to set up, though, too, unless they join with either, like, Abbotsford or something like that, or Vancouver Police. It's very hard to set it up. You got to set up training centers and everything. It's lots of expense in setting up your own police force, other than, the RCMP is expensive for sure.
I mean, what would happen to all the Mounties as well? Because the Kelowna detachment is now the biggest one in Canada, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of Mounties, like 300 and something.
So when a municipality starts its own police force, the RCMP don't leave altogether. Like, they still have presences in Edmonton and Calgary and Vancouver and stuff like that. They just are more on the bigger crimes and stuff like that, as opposed to like traffic enforcement and that kind of stuff, right? So.
Right, which is what our boy Justin wants to happen anyway, isn't it? He wants the RCMP to get away from that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, it just moves the RCMP up into the next level of crime. I mean, obviously they wouldn't have as many people around, so they would be handling more like felonies and stuff like that, as opposed to, I mean, I don't know all the details of it, but like a lot of the police forces, there is RCMP in all the areas where there is municipal police forces.
Right.
There you go. David Eby terminates that downtown east side consultancy contracts that came under fire. He got a lot of heat for that. He's terminated that contract to improve conditions in the Vancouver's downtown east side, because obviously there was a bit of a, a lot of critics were attacking that, and it called it political favor and lacked transparency.
Yeah, nice wee scandal for our boy David there, along with the rest of his scandals that he's got to figure out.
Yeah, shelled out a few dollars to this guy too, and the guy was basically taking phone calls.
Well, well, the worst thing, this is a point made by the BC Conservatives, but I think it's also valid. It's not just a political point. The worst thing is that there was no measurement of success. No. I mean, jobs like that where you're shelling out a lot of money, you've got to have some kind of way of judging if they're successful or not, haven't you? You can't just give them completely sort of free rein to do what they want.
Yeah, and it was a consulting company owned by Bryant, a former CEO of Legal Aid of BC. And in the news briefing, Eby said Bryant would receive no severance, and he had been paid up to Sunday an amount in the neighborhood about $75,000, right? So, but this contract was for $325,000, including $25,000 in expenses.
It's a pretty penny, isn't it? Especially when you're being given that by a completely broke province. It just, can't figure out its finances and hasn't been able to for quite a number of years.
There's a group pushing here in West Kelowna there to get the city of West Kelowna to utilize solar power. They want a big solar array out there. I've got solar on my roof. It's the Glen Rosa Residents Association will be appearing for West Kelowna to urge them to leverage solar power for the city. I've always said that maybe if you take away some of the forest, that is in the area around the homes there, and turn that into solar panels, it might be a good use, and that protect homes from fire to wildfire in the interface areas.
It's not a bad idea.
And that side of the mountain there.
They've done it in Summerland, haven't they? They've gone all in on, appropriately, they've gone all in on solar panels in a place called Summerland. That makes sense.
And that side of the lake there, with the west, on the west side there, definitely would be in a great place for the sun's rays. Like that side of the, like that facing the way the hill's up like that on that side too. Great place for solar panels.
Yeah, and they say West Kelowna is well positioned to become a solar energy powerhouse. I bet you Gilbo would absolutely love that.
Yeah, well, I pitched it as well, and I said, you could take that interface area where we lost a bunch of homes in that fire a couple of years ago now, and if you just did that hillside there, it would, one, protect homes from wildfire, and also generate a ton of electricity. Makes sense on that side for sure. Let's move on to markets, though. Bitcoin just roaring first, but the Canadian stock market, though, or sorry, the markets in general, just kind of just kind of chunking along there. That's off 300 points right now. Again, holding. It's kind of in a holding pattern as it waits to develop. But gold above the $3,300 mark again in U.S. dollars, 33.08, up $16 today. So holding that after it hit that high of 3,500. But the one that we want to talk about there is Bitcoin. There goes Bitcoin, right? We said it was going to challenge its old high, and there it is. Now what does it do, I guess is the question. What does it do from here? Does it push through and go a lot higher, or does it fall back? And it has fallen back a bit here right now, currently at 105,000 after it touched that again, right? So that's what you get whenever those psychological barriers. Actually, it's 109 right now, 109,505. So there you go. I think it just broke an all-time high.
I would imagine panic is going to follow now, as has often been the case with Bitcoin, and then it'll be back up again. It's just such an unruly investment, that, isn't it?
I do think though, like if it breaks through and closes above the all-time high here, that it could go substantially higher. There you go. Canadian dollar, again, looking for direction, not finding much.
Oh, it's having a little bit of a jump there, isn't it? But
yeah. Remains to be seen.
It's creating a nice little valley there.
The valley of the shadow?
Let's hope not.
The Canadian pension fund, the Financial Post did a story. Even though with all this buy Canadian pressure, the Canadian pension fund is buying a lot more U.S. assets.
Canadians like the idea that their pensions will grow in value, I suppose. And if that's what you want, then yeah, you're gonna have to go to America.
Yeah, so I mean, buy Canadian, except if you're a big hedge fund, you're Brookfield, or what have you, then you go to the U.S. An opinion piece written by Gwen Morgan of the Financial Post there too, on wondering what we're going to get to see out of Mark Carney, because he has been, a climate kind of like czar, and the carbon tax is now zero, but the Prime Minister's background is about, like you said earlier, climate alarmism in the financial sector, and he was the co-chair of that Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, and the UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance. Like he definitely founded quite a few things. He was a regular at Davos and all that kind of stuff. And energy superpowers don't import much foreign oil, but much of Quebec's oil comes from Saudi Arabia, Algeria, Nigeria. That's funny. They don't want a pipeline from Alberta, but they'll gladly take the oil from Saudi Arabia, Algeria, and Nigeria.
Well, even Carney mentioned the lunacy of that, didn't he? But he's been so timid when it comes to these projects, considering that he's told us we're in the biggest crisis since the Second World War. He's been awfully timid, isn't he? Because he's like, of course, we'll do these things if our friends in Quebec let us do it, and if the First Nations let us and give us permission, which we'll ask for very nicely. It's like, can you imagine like Winston Churchill? I know I often bring up this comparison, but this is Mark Carney. He's created this comparison, not me. But can you imagine Winston Churchill being like, oh, I'm awfully sorry, but would you mind if I did something to win this war? Because we kind of need to win this war. But Mark Carney, I mean, that's an indication, isn't it, of how he's going to govern. He's exaggerated the threat from the US to get elected, and then immediately his actions tell you that he doesn't take it even half as seriously as he suggests. And then he's going to bottle, as we say. He's not going to go through with a lot of these projects, and he's going to say, well, we asked and Quebec said no, so I guess that's it. Which is not really how you behave in a war, is it? It's not how you behave in an existential crisis, which they love to talk about.
Yeah, so then in our technology, AI, and transportation section, Tesla is the talk of Wall Street. Lots of talk about Tesla. And here's Walter Isaacson on Elon Musk, who, since he's kind of like stepped back from Doge. We're going to play a little clip here from Walter.
Interview on CNBC, the Qatar Investment Conference, is he's going all in on Tesla now, on Optimus, and also on XAI, on Grok. He's back to his basic companies as opposed to this 6-month detour with Doge. And I think that you're seeing a major push all around autonomy, whether it's a robot, whether it's the artificial.
I'm going to play this next clip here of Optimus working in the factory there. Let's play this clip of Optimus first. robotaxi set to launch here in June. Optimus promising to be the dance troupe on stage with him, and they're talking about a legion of Optimuses this year. And then they think this will be the biggest product ever from Tesla, Optimus.
Does look pretty cool, doesn't it? I mean, some of its movements are a bit sort of weird and cumbersome, but in general, I mean, I liked seeing it sweep up the whatever it was on the floor there into the, whatever that is, pan thing. That's good to see, isn't it? Because nobody likes doing that. Just send the robot to do it.
There you go. We do have one more clip here from. We actually got a couple where it just looks like the Elon segment today. He was in the news a lot, Wall Street, lots to talk about him. He was also interviewed. It was kind of like a tough interview in Qatar there. So let's play this clip here.
Influence. I wondered whether you have decided yet how much you're going to spend on the upcoming midterms. Is it you spent a lot more money on the last US election than you envisaged when you were speaking here 3 years ago. Are you going to continue to spend at that kind of level on future elections?
I think in terms of political spending, I'm going to do a lot less in the future.
And why is that?
I think I've done enough.
Is it because of blowback?
Well, if I see a reason to do political spending in the future, I will do it. I do not currently see a reason.
Okay. What about political influence beyond the US? How often do you speak to President Putin?
I don't speak to President Putin.
You've never spoken to President Putin?
I was on a video call with him once about 5 years ago.
Okay. That's the only.
Why would you think I speak to President Putin? Oh, you must. I get it.
Because
You believe the legacy.
Actually, I've heard you speak about it. For example, in your West Point speech, you said, "Oh, I challenged President Putin to was it an arm wrestle?" And I know the Wall Street Journal has reported your reported conversations.
Oh, yes.
If you're saying they haven't happened other than once, I'll take that as read.
Is there a worse publication on the face of the earth than the Wall Street Journal? I wouldn't use that to line up my cage for paragraph.
There you go. Elon says.
That journalist, if she is indeed a journalist, I don't know what you want to call her really, maybe a liberal activist. She was at the BBC for most of her career. The BBC's sort of flagship radio show. Michelle Hussein is her name. She's rather insufferable, so I can't blame Elon Musk for being peevish and churlish there. She is very, very irritating and very tendentious.
Yeah, and I was going to play a couple more, but I won't play a couple more because it seems like a lot here. But Elon does go on to say that Optimus will be learning tasks by watching YouTube videos and playing with toys as a child does. Pretty impressive, right? He's going to learn from actually playing with toys and watching YouTube videos. Going to learn any tasks just by watching YouTube videos.
Yeah, that's remarkable, isn't it? But that's how the Teslas are trained as well, isn't it?
Vision-based learning, yeah. We got a little clip here to play from Starlink. We're going to jump ahead here. I'm going to play this clip here from Starlink that just got added to the United Airlines goes all in on Starlink. That's good. So many airlines are now putting Starlink on the plane, and it's actually quite nice if you're sitting on the plane there. You don't have to buy a movie or whatever. You can just use your phone. And I've used it a few times now, so it's been great. All those people that hate Elon Musk, though, they're going to have to, not use it. They're going to have to say, "Oh no, I protest. I will not be using Starlink." So there you go.
Including the federal government of Canada.
That's right. You're not going to be allowed to use it because you're going to have to protest. The U.S. Senate's moving to block California's vehicle emission rules, where they're saying no more sale of gas-powered cars by 2035. Again, you and I talk about this over and over and over again. End the EV mandate in Canada, or you will not have an automobile sector to protect Francois Philippe Champagne and Melanie Joly. Like absolutely, it's and Mary Barra, the CEO of GM, is also asking in a letter to shareholders asking for people to put pressure on the California government to end the EV mandates.
Well, it's kind of, yeah, that needs to go, I would say, if you're interested in having employment and manufacturing in Canada. You would obviously want to get rid of that because it's crazy. But also the emissions cap. I mean, it's called an emissions cap. You might as well call it a kind of productivity cap or an industrial production cap. It's just bananas, really. It's almost like there's no interest in growing manufacturing it. Instead, it's all apparently we're going to get rich with services.
The economy
we'll all
crippling
join some kind of environmental NGO. That'll be how we make our money.
Well, why don't we just go around seizing assets?
Yeah, it's a good idea, isn't it? Let's seize all the Teslas in Canada. That'll give us a bit of money.
There you go. We're going to move on to our Are You Serious section. This is the section that we're going to actually kind of change it around from just memes to like, are you serious? Like, and here's Bill Maher calling out Jake Tapper in his book.
A brand new excerpt from my upcoming book with Axios' Alex Thompson. It's called Original Sin. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's on Biden's decline. It's called Original Sin. I'm sure you've heard on May 20th. That's Tuesday. Original Sin. That's coming out in 3 weeks. On May 20th. That's just 19 days away. In 1 week and 1 day. It's coming out in just a few days. Comes out Tuesday. You will not believe what we found out.
News people have to tell you what they know when they find it out? Isn't that the difference between news and a secret? You won't believe what we found out. No, that's why I'm watching. Breaking news in a week.
You can go watch that full clip from Bill Maher there, right? But I don't know, the only thing Jake Tapper could have been doing, and it wasn't just him on CNN hawking that book. Almost all the other CNN anchors or talking heads were hawking that book. It's almost like they should be throwing in a set of Ginsu knives with it.
Jon Stewart, though, he's a very cheeky boy.
Okay, Jon Stewart, not Bill Maher, sorry.
He presents himself as a comic. It's like, oh no, I'm just a comic. I'm just telling jokes, guys. But just like the Colbert, whatever the hell his name, like they're not just telling jokes. They're political agitators, but they wrap themselves in the cloak of comedy, don't they? So every criticism that he levels at Tapper could also be leveled at him, really. So watch what you're doing, John boy.
Yeah, I called him Bill Maher by mistake. So yeah, Jon Stewart. They all look the same though.
Well, Bill Maher looks a bit worse for wear, doesn't he? Compared to Jon Stewart, Bill Maher looks like a sort of recently resurrected corpse. But maybe that's just my opinion.
And then we got one here too for the religious. Here's a map of Canada that Mark Nixon put out there and said, "Where's all the climate emergency headlines right now?"
Good times in Yellowknife. Look at that. Bloody hell.
Yeah. There you go.
Happy days. And Thunder Bay, as usual, they're not happy there with their weather.
Yeah, Sean Fraser and was it Mark Miller, or who's the one that was said that was Mark Miller? Sean Fraser.
Oh, you're talking about Mark Holland.
Mark Holland, there you go. Yeah.
Who doesn't want you to have go on road trips because it'll hurt the environment.
Right.
Very smart people. You know, we've got some real like big talents in the Canadian government, haven't we? Thank God for that.
And then here you go, Toronto Sun. Brian Lilly put out a piece that Liberals lied on the carbon tax, according to Stats Canada. Imagine that. You and I talked about that yesterday. Apparently, removing the carbon tax does lower inflation. And those 200 economists, economists that said it didn't have been fired. Likely not.
No, they've moved on to the next, whatever the next joke is, the next sort of false narrative. I think it's probably what the next image is. That's the next false narrative, isn't it?
Yeah, they're the elbows up crowd. There's Carney Guilbeault and our friend Chrystia Freeland, longtime friend of the show.
The funniest thing about that is the implication that Mark Carney, Steve Guilbeault, or Chrystia Freeland are taller than anybody on the planet.
There you go.
Because it should really be exactly the other way around, shouldn't it? They're all strangely petite, aren't they? Our elite. We've got a petite elite.
And there's a lot of people right now really angry at the Toronto Maple Leafs, saying that they're the worst team ever. And then somebody found out that there is a team worse than the Maple Leafs. And then we have a picture of that team right here.
The audacity of the Governor General, though. That is the Governor General, isn't it? In the sort of mint green. That's kind of like, you know, you're going to stand out if you wear that. But whatever. So, I guess she should be noticed.
So the Leafs fans, you are not alone. Canada suffers with you. There you go.
Yeah, they're mad, aren't they, the Leafs fans? They get very aggressive, don't they, when they lose? They really hit out at the team. Find out that's very common in England with soccer, but it's not normal in Canada, is it? In Canada, it's usually like, oh, you tried your best. We still love you, but not the Leafs. They hate them, don't they?
Well, this is some solace for Leafs fans. There is a team worse than the Maple Leafs.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a lot of crossover between supporting the Leafs and supporting the people in that picture.
There you go. We got a little clip here from Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan hasn't made it on our show for a while, but we got a clip here from Joe Rogan.
Boy, imagine
Elon is funny as shit, man. He's
funny as shit.
Yeah,
getting
he
dumped
really
on
is.
by that guy's got to suck because you can't even say he's a dumbass.
Right.
You know?
That's right. Yeah. You can say many things. You can't say he's a dumbass.
You get dunked on by one of the smartest guys alive. Boy.
There you go.
He's not a dumbass, but he does say quite a lot of dumb things. I would say, and he says that himself, actually. So
there you go. And this is somebody from the media says that, the media didn't lie. And then okay, maybe we lied about Biden's health, Russian collusion, COVID, Hunter's laptop, voter fraud, January 6th, Ukraine, Epstein, Hollywood, and everything between. But trust us when you tell you that Trump is a threat to democracy. There you go. Jake Tapper, actually in a different interview, really went to town on Hunter Biden and said that he's a disgusting individual, like bottom of the barrel scum. And he even talked about how he slept with his brother's, his dead brother's wife and all that kind of stuff, and they got her hooked on cocaine. And turns out, they say he is the one that was running the White House, that he was making a lot of decisions at the White House. So instead of somebody that wasn't there, you had somebody that was high on crack.
I mean, let's not forget that Biden made the absolutely surreal, bizarre decision to pardon members of his own family before he left office. There's so much more to come out of that, isn't there? There's so much more juicy detail to be revealed.
They're now saying that he wasn't even in the same state when those pardons were written by the auto pen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a really crazy time, that, wasn't it? Biden as president, COVID, and all sorts of other things occurring simultaneously. That was a bit mad that he was ever the president.
Dr. Jill is not coming out of this unscathed as well. There's a lot of fingers being pointed at Dr. Jill and Hunter Biden. And Hunter can't even sell his paintings anymore. You could probably buy one fairly cheap right now. Did we just freeze? I think you froze there for a second.
Yeah, and Biden.
Is he back?
Been struck by the Biden
network. What's that? We'll see if he comes back. We only got one left here to go. And this one is good news for the Liberal Party. Put this one on. This is the comedy in itself. The good news is Canadians looking to build a stronger economy. Inflation drops to 1.7%. Look what the good work that the Liberals have done. Wasn't it them and 200 economists that said the carbon tax did not contribute to inflation? Now it shows it clearly did, and now you want to take credit for crippling the Canadian economy with a carbon tax that your leader and our new prime minister said that has little effect on carbon emissions. Quite the victory lap.
I mean, there's
here,
also
eh?
the very like unglamorous reality of this political decision, this rather devious, cynical political decision by the Liberals to get rid of the carbon tax. It was forced on them because the Conservative Party relentlessly hammered this issue, won the public argument about it, and ended up being 25 points ahead in the polls or whatever. So the Liberals thought, all right, we'll get rid of that then. And now they're talking about how generous they are and how wise they are. It's a little bit hard to swallow, isn't it?
It was brilliant of them, though. You have to admit, in marketing terms, they took that from Pierre, took all the credit for it, and basically took away his whole campaign. And now they're still taking credit for it. Like, I mean, I don't think many Canadians buy it. Maybe, I guess you could tell who buys into it. That they're taking credit for something that somebody should go back and watch some of the stuff, especially, Guilbeault and Freeland and Trudeau and these 200 economists that were laureate economists that, like when they tried it out in the CBC kept saying it too, they kept telling us how that it doesn't contribute to inflation. And these same publications are now trotting it out as removing the inflationary causing carbon tax. What a great gift to Canadians. Now that the economy has been crippled with it, eh? And now they want to take credit for it.
But I do wonder if Justin Trudeau had done this, if he'd got rid of the carbon tax and he'd gone into the election as the leader of the Liberal Party, I think people would have despised him even more, wouldn't they? Because they would look at him as, devious and all the rest of it. But I think the real, the coup de grace was that it was Mark Carney that did it, and it was this new face. And so many people, like you were mentioning that Financial Post column, which is all about Carney's past as a kind of agitator for climate change regulations and all the rest of it. So many people don't know that about Carney. They're not even aware that that's kind of his identity, really, is that he's the Greta Thunberg of central bankers. But apparently, doesn't matter that that's his history. I mean, people don't even know. Never mind care.
You gotta go check out the pictures of Mark Carney and his wife greeting the Pope. You gotta see those pictures. I'm sure you've seen it, right?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
I just thought that one was too easy to put up there, so I didn't put it into the comedy section. But
he was asked about that in Rome in that press conference, and his response was absolutely bizarre. His response was to come out and basically say, my faith has it doesn't influence me in my political decisions. I was like, nobody said it did. What are you on about?
No.
Very, very peculiar.
Well, that's our show for today. Hope you enjoyed the comedy section. I know everybody needs to laugh these days. That one person that was telling us how great it is in Canada, how great the economy is and everything. Someone needs to tell that to the people living in Canada and some of the businesses that are struggling. And obviously somebody needs to tell that union later, we don't need to seize assets because the Canadian economy is doing so well. And David Eby can give us the $1,000 he promised us because the economy is doing so well. I'd like to be in a room there with David Eby and Danielle Smith and see what goes on. We'll see what we hear from that.
But also, Mark Carney, I guess, is also a complete idiot then. Because he's been saying that the economy's been in it's been neglected and it's in a bit of a rush shape and all the rest of it. I thought he was the prince of experts and he knew the economics better than anybody alive, but maybe not.
Yeah, and he's also said this is the biggest threat of our lifetime. And then somebody's trying to tell us there that it was like everything's great. So what's the threat then?
Maybe the threat, Jim, is that the Liberal Party very nearly was removed from power. But I don't know, that's very cynical, isn't it?
I do want to do this story. Bill C-18 still exists. I'm going to do this in John's soapbox. Bill C-18 still exists. Pierre Poilievre's government was going to remove it. And Mark Carney, all they've done for media is give the CBC more money. They gave them more funding. And immediately, the CBC executive gave themselves a raise because they said Canadians don't like the doling out the bonuses, so they just added the bonus onto their pay so that they get the bonus right away, and then Canadians will find that more palatable, I guess. But they said that the reporters are fairly paid, so none for them. A raise for the executive team. And there you go.
As the Canadian, Canadian journalists drown in desperation and poverty and hopelessness, CBC, which churns out reliably banal, at best, content. Bonanza for them, isn't it? Great times for them.
If you were a cynic...
Well, at least someone's happy.
Hey, if you were a cynic, you could say, why did the executive get a raise? Was it just like, hey, thanks for helping us win the election, and here's your check?
Oh, just thanks for running this glorious Canadian institution so well. As everybody says, the CBC has never looked better, has it? It's never been better managed than it is now. So you got to reward the people responsible for that, obviously.
Catherine Tate did not like sitting through those hearings talking about her bonus and having to fight for the bonuses that she felt that she deserved. So now they don't have to fight for those bonuses because they're just going to put it right on their checks, and then the bonus is there whatever they get paid every 2 weeks, every month. I don't know what they get paid, but they don't have to go and kind of get grilled for these bonuses, Because who wants to do that, right?
Nah. Forget about that. They're not vulgar, are they?
Especially when you lay off staff, and then you take a bonus. Lay off staff just before Christmas and then take a bonus. Why would anybody be cynical? Doesn't make any sense. Bill C-18 still exists. Bill C-18 still exists. That's impoverishing media. Close to 100 outlets have failed in Canada. More will fail in Canada. It actually puts everybody at the begging bowl. It's cut traffic in half for all outlets across Canada. And it puts media outlets at the mercy of the Liberal government, who selectively decide who gets funding and who doesn't get funding. If that is not a threat to democracy, I don't know what is. And if we want some honest journalism in Canada, we need to get the government out of media.
Indeed.
With that said,
what a surprise that we are among a very small number of people that say this. I mean, that's disgraceful, really, isn't it, to all those people that are silent?
The ones that are at the begging bowl, that are taking the money. I've talked to a few of them and saying, why aren't you doing a story on Bill C-18? Well, we need the money. Okay.
And right? They do. That's true. They do need it. But, I mean, it's a shame that they abandoned principles.
But they need the money. They want the traffic back as well. So Facebook is the bad guy. Facebook has said repeatedly, it's a symbiotic relationship, as we agree with. We all willingly put our content on Facebook. Facebook never stole anything. We put it there. We put it there willingly. Facebook steals nothing. And Facebook said you should pay us. And we're it's, again, a symbiotic relationship. Anyway, the fight goes on. With that said, we do thank you for watching Now Media, and we'd appreciate it if you continue to watch us, even though Bill C-18 has taken away a large portion of our audience and with no compensation. There you go. Cheers, have a great...
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Colona Now, local, independent. News you can trust.